Good evening from Swansea wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. Last night was Monday Night Raw, and was a show that a lot of people are saying is one of the best episodes of the year so far. But do we agree or do we disagree? Well, today, let's get into it. To join me today, we have a special two-man show. To join me, we have the co-host of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, Clark Taylor. How are you, Clark?
I'm doing well, as usual. Stoked to be back. I'm doing double duty today. We got two shows today. So after you get done watching this, take a nice break, go watch NXT, and then tune in 10 minutes after the top of the hour in whatever time zone you're in for Wrestling Off the Air. It's Wrestling Republic with me, Drizzy, and Shot. It's going to be outstanding. But outside of that, we had a great episode of Raw, and I can't wait to get that out of the way first and let's get right into it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've wanted to do, post-show shoot Wrestling Republic for a long, long time now. I mean, I wanted to wait until, we had the right group of people to do it. And Shard and Drizzy, they're so passionate about NXT. You know this, Clark. They're so excited, and it's going to be a banger of a show tonight. Super excited. So make sure you guys tune into that 10 minutes following NXT. But right now, let's talk about Monday Night Raw. And let's firstly talk about the opening segment, because Cody Rhodes, Mr. Cody Rhodes, opened the show and said that he could beat anybody right now. He felt like he could beat anyone in WWE. Well, Seth Rollins once again interrupted him. And we saw this a couple of months ago where actually that time it was Cody interrupting Seth. Seth came out and said, I'm repaying the favor. And it really seems like the plan is just tease this match all year long and then either do it at WrestleMania or just don't do it at all and have Cody challenge Roman Reigns and then, for a feud then between Seth and Cody down the line where, Seth can say, well, you won the Royal Rumble and you dodged me. You went to Roman instead. I personally think that's what's going to happen, and I think that'll be great. A great feud following WrestleMania 40. But let's get back to the present right now, because the Judgment Day, of course, interrupted, but Balor was interestingly nowhere to be seen. Priest then introduced Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio as the champions that they are. One tiny note, one tiny thing which I didn't like, and I am being over the top with this, but Dominic Mysterio didn't hold his title belt up when he was announced, right? Rhea Ripley did it. Damian Priest held his Money in the Bank up. Dominic Mysterio didn't hold up the North American title. Just a thing you meant to do in wrestling. Obviously, a small mistake there, but it's just one thing that Dom needs to do and learn, and I'm sure he will, because every week he learns and gets better. Let's be real about it. But then, from behind, Balor attacked Cody and Seth Rollins before Sami Zayn, of all people, made the save. Cody then set up a tag match, a 6-man tag match for later in the night. And Seth Rollins, well, he was not too happy about this. Clark, was he? What was your thoughts on this opening segment?
It's funny. I'm surprised you didn't ask me about the Cody promo. I guess maybe I've shaken my reputation as far as being a Cody hater, but I will say my favorite thing about it was him mentioning his mother saying Brock acknowledged him.
Yeah.
That was special. That was brilliant. Whether she said it or not, it was awesome. That was one of my favorite Cody lines after what do you want to talk about I've ever heard. And going through Brock's history in Minnesota as well. As far as the segment as a whole, I thought it was a little weird bringing Rollins into a Cody Rhodes storyline now if you're not going to pay that off with a world title match.
Yeah.
And my worry is, where does Cody go from here? We saw later in the night, obviously, and we're going to talk about it later in the show, but I have a hard time not watching this segment and asking myself what's next for Cody.
Yeah.
It's like at the end of it, all I could think was like, wow, that was really well executed, but like, what now? And Rollins is great. Judgment Day is great. You touched upon the Dom holding the title up thing. Honestly, that was a point I was gonna bring up myself.
Mhm.
But I do think it was kind of funny because ironically, it's the one NXT title. It was kind of like a shot at NXT. It would be kind of cool if his next challenger uses that, right?
Yeah,
NXT,
maybe.
like, do you disrespect that you're a champion on NXT? You just carry the belt around so that you can, try to be one of your friends. Like that would be a nice little avenue into a cool feud on NXT. I wouldn't have an issue with that. To be honest, sometimes you can take advantage of a mistake like that. And that would be cool to see. Overall, though, I thought it was a fine opening segment and I was entertained thoroughly for sure.
Yeah, no, I will agree with that. And in terms of the Seth and Cody stuff, I actually don't have an issue with it, right? Because you're seeing in these, in these segments, in interviews, sorry, that Cody's saying that him and Seth really don't like each other. They legitimately dislike each other in real life. And when you see them together on TV, there's some friction there, but they're not paying it off right now. It's long-term storytelling, and I don't mind that. If I'm being honest, I don't think professional wrestling does enough of that at times. So as long as eventually they do pay it off and they don't just never address it, I'm fine with it.
I think that's fair, but at the same time, it's a little bit like it's too much of a tease in my eyes
Mm,
there, right? Because we don't know where Cody's going from here. And it looks like Seth is going to continue to feud with the bloodline because of the money in the bank thing. So I feel like it just muddies the waters there.
yeah,
I would love to have
that's
something
fair.
lined up for Cody to do outside of just inserting him in as the random piece in what has become now a long-term Seth and Judgment Day story, you know?
That's fair. Yes, absolutely. I can 100% see that. But moving on, then we had a fatal four-way number one contenders match. And well, this was very random. It certainly was. Adam Pearce made the match official to find a new challenger for Gunther, and he chose four man that haven't been on a good run in WWE lately, and he chose Riddle, Ciampa, Gable, and Ricochet. And I didn't mind this. You need something to do with all four men, and then they went in the ring together. It's not really surprising considering they're all great. But they had a banger. They really, really did. They tore the house down. And then Gable, in his hometown, got the victory. He earned himself a championship shot against Gunther. I'm excited. I really am for this one. My only issue at all with this segment is, where they go from here with the other three guys. Because Ciampa's got zero direction. He needs Gargano back. And he needs Gargano back fast. Because a DIY reunion could be huge. I really think it could be. Ricochet's coming off that feud with Logan Paul. I hope they don't just drop that now. Maybe they, wait a few months before they return to it because, of course, Logan's got a boxing fight coming up. But I really hope they don't just do nothing with Ricochet now. As for Riddle, I mean, Peter Ryan this week on WrestlingRepublic.com posted an article where he suggested, well, why doesn't Matt Riddle turn heel? That could be interesting. And yeah, if Orton's not returning anytime soon, perhaps that's the way to go. But Clark, give me your thoughts on the Fatal 4-Way.
I loved the match and I love Gable. He earned this over the last year. Definitively. Like I when I was reviewing Raw, I used to write all the time, like, how does Gable manage to steal the show, whether he gets 5 minutes or 15 in a loss every week? I don't understand it. There was a huge stretch in the middle of last year where I was just baffled. I'm like, Gable is on the other end of the most steal the show of matches you could possibly be in, because it's in a weird card placement against whether it's a lower or mid card talent, and he's taking the loss but just absolutely putting on banger after banger, for lack of a better term. Him against Gunther, this is an awesome matchup. I cannot wait to see what they do. Now, what we do with the other three, oof. Ricochet feels like he just kind of peaked with the Logan Paul feud, unless he was going to build upon that today or yesterday. Ciampa DIY, like you said, that's the best choice. I mean, what else is there? And then Riddle is the oddest case of them all, because if you asked me a year ago, would Riddle be in a fatal 4-way, number one contender intercontinental title match for the intercontinental title against Ciampa, Gable, and Ricochet and not be the one to go over, I would have said you're out of your mind. Like, no, yeah, sorry for completely botching that, but you get what I'm saying there.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like it's baffling the fall from not grace, but just the fall from the position he was on in the card coming out of RK Bro. I mean, he wrestled Roman Reigns.
He did.
He's like not that long ago.
And it looked like they were going to set it up for, a long pay-per-view angle with doing Riddle versus Roman Reigns at one show and then Orton versus Reigns the next. Of course, neither of those matches ended up happening, and Riddle just faced Roman on an episode of SmackDown in the end.
Yeah.
It was rough for him. It
really
weird. Was. I thought that was when he's going to reach the next level, really.
No doubt.
Yeah, but let's now move on. And let's talk about the women's division. And let's talk about Becky Lynch, who we all know, right? Actually, before we do that, we do have a comment here from our good friend, number one Superfly, who is saying, this is just a question, but would you expect Gunther versus Chad Gable to be a contender for match of the year?
Yeah.
I mean, yep. We saw them go at it, a couple of weeks ago, and that was only, a short match where, Gable was trying to survive, and that was a banger. I certainly think this could be a very interesting program between the two. But now let's move on to another interesting program, and that is Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus. Becky, came out on Monday Night Raw to continue the hype for her match against Trish Stratus next week. However, Zoe Stark predictably, interrupted Becky, and the two had, a bit of a promo war, apart from Zoe Stark got brutally watered. And then Shayna Baszler came out. Of course, Shayna submitted Ronda Rousey, the first person in WWE to do that this past weekend at SummerSlam. And, Shayna started, talking some beef with Zoe Stark, and Becky Lynch suggested a match between the two women tonight. And Adam Pearce came out and said, let's make it official. And he absolutely did. I enjoyed the match. I thought it was fun. I was kind of worried when this was, first announced. I was like, well, Zoe Stark, you don't want her to get lost in the shuffle as soon as Trish Stratus goes next week. That's my real big fear. But at the same time, you cannot have Shayna lose because she just beat Ronda. She now needs to build on momentum. However, the two women, had a long match. It was a very good match, and both looked strong. Zoe Stark looked like a bit of an idiot in the end, getting distracted by Becky. But because of that, it was enough of a distraction, really, to, make it, I would say, not a clean loss, I guess you could say. And Shayna got the win, all importantly. And then Becky, this was gold, was drinking lemonade at ringside. And for those of you who haven't seen it, right, this past weekend on social media, she was not, I can't remember where SummerSlam even was now. Detroit. She was not in Detroit for SummerSlam. Instead, she was back home, and she just did an Instagram caption of her making lemonade, saying, "Making lemonade with all these lemons I've been handed." Caption of the year. And then for her to be drinking lemonade on this Raw following that was golden. But I enjoyed this. The only issue I had with it, and truthfully, it is a little bit of a big issue, right? Because yes, it built on Shayna's momentum. Yes, it made Zoe Stark, the interest in her continue. But the one thing the segment didn't do is build to Becky versus Trish next week, which is kind of probably what it was meant to do. Clark, thoughts on this one?
I don't know that it didn't build towards it. It didn't build enough towards it. I loved the lemonade spot. I mean, it was implied. The commentary brought it up. But yeah, at the end of the day, I there could have been more, but I don't think Trish was there. Right? So at the end of the day, what can you do? And I enjoyed the match. Shayna and Zoe Stark had awesome chemistry in the ring. That match was way better than I expected. It honestly looked cleaner than the Shayna Ronda match. It was good. I enjoyed the match a lot.
Yeah, no, I will agree with you there. It was certainly cleaner. And yeah, I mean, what I think happened was, right, this is me purely speculating, right, as a fan speculating. I feel like, this match was meant to happen. Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus was meant to happen at SummerSlam. So Trish Stratus had prior commitments booked this week on, for this episode of Raw, and she couldn't get out of them, and that's why she wasn't there. But they're meant to be, building that. That should be the main event of Raw next week. That's one of the most, built-up women's matches in a long time in WWE. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago on this show, I think it was Drizzy compared it to, Hogan and The Rock. And it doesn't feel like that anymore. It should have been at SummerSlam. It just... It feels like it was done dirty a little bit, in all honesty. But after this, we headed backstage, and guess who was there, Clark? Mr. JD McDonough. Where's he been for the last 3 months? Who knows? But of course, he was in the Battle Royale at SummerSlam. Got very quickly eliminated from that. But he finally remembered he was on Raw this week, and that he's friends with Finn Balor, and him and Finn Balor resumed the storyline from months ago. Just acted like, it never stopped. JD and Balor were talking backstage before Damian Priest interrupted. Priest not so kindly asked JD to leave, and Balor said, no, he stays. Balor and Priest ended up having a little bit of an argument before Rhea Ripley got in between them and said, hey, you guys need to get on the same page. We're not doing this all over again. Then JD McDonough stepped in and went, I know it's not my place, guys, but I think that briefcase is coming between you two. You should get rid of it. And Damian Priest was not too happy about that comment. He really, really was not. We cut to commercial. We come back from commercial, and Shinsuke Nakamura, was being interviewed after his win earlier in the night against Bronson Reed, and, great match itself that was. And then, Nakamura was being interviewed, was about to say, his next move before JD McDonough took out Sami Zayn backstage. They cut to that. Nakamura was, he was not too happy about it. And then Nakamura announced that he would join Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. He would replace Sami Zayn, an injured Sami Zayn, in that main event. What did you think about this entire backstage interaction, Clark? Did you think that, JD McDonough... Do you think this JD McDonough Finn Balor story still has legs?
I don't know that it does. I don't know. I mean, what are they going to eventually turn this into them tagging against Sami and Kevin? Is that the story they're going to tell us? I guess, why did he attack Sami Zayn? That's the part that threw me. I maybe it did have legs, and then I was
Finn,
like,
I think.
What's that?
For Finn Balor, I presume.
Yeah, I guess. Well, why?
Because he trained him? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this?
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Perhaps?
I was lost. Like, is JD the real leader of the Judgement Day? Like, what? I don't get it. Like, I was like, okay, that's a really big bump on Sami's elbow. Like, that was basically my biggest takeaway. And then they added Shin to the main event because he can't wrestle with an elbow like that. And then it was like JD had the encounter with Finn. I was lost on this one.
Let me explain to you what I think happened, right? From kayfabe standpoint, Balor and JD McDonough walked away together at the end of that Judgment Day segment. During the commercial break, Balor probably said, we got this big 6-man tag team match tonight. JD said, is there anything I can do to help? He's like, oh no, the Judgment Day won't want you involved, but if you want to make another statement, like you did with Dolph Ziggler a few months ago, which again led to nothing, why don't you, take out Sami Zayn? He's over there. Back from commercial, Nakamura's being interviewed. JD McDonough takes out Sami Zayn. That was my perspective on it. Although they didn't really do a good job of explaining this. But who knows? Maybe Finn's got some master plan, but it's not clear right now, is it? And I can tell, Clark, you weren't a fan of this, were you?
I was just confused. I was like, this is just featuring the elbow. That's the highlight.
The elbow was the highlight of the night.
The elbow was a highlight. The elbow was nasty. It looked terrible. It looked like really painful. I mean, terrible in a good way. Like, it looked really painful. Like, I mean, like hurty.
Yeah.
Like, other than that,
this segment match flow, just a picture of the elbow.
Yeah, I was like, I don't get it.
Fair enough. Now let's move on to the next segment. Let's move on and talk about everybody's favorite LA Knight. Yeah.
Let me talk
And
to you.
let me talk to you. He was having a photo shoot. Bit of a weird one, but I guess he, won the Slim Jim Battle Royale, and Slim Jim were like, well, we need you guys, we need you to do a photo shoot on Monday. Okay, so LA Knight came to Raw, and it was at this point that the Miz also was expecting a photo shoot to happen. So Miz wasn't too happy that he had to wait. Miz went out to the ring and complained how new stars such as LA Knight aren't showing him the respect that he deserves. I feel like we've seen this Miz promo a million times. But then LA Knight, came out. And the two had a promo battle, and it was a great promo battle. It was some of Miz's best promo work in well over a year in WWE, I'd say. And LA Knight had a botch in the promo that people are really exaggerating. It was a slight, I just made on there, a slight, mistake. I have answered to everybody. I don't know why everybody's acting like LA Knight's not allowed a mistake. Clark, what did you think about this promo?
I was completely fine with it. LA Knight's music hit. The crowd went absolutely wild. The Miz's line about the Attitude Era was awesome. Right. It was hilarious. And I was completely fine with it. Keep pushing LA Knight. LA Knight is, in my eyes, the most entertaining act we haven't seen fully tapped into and fledged out going right now. Right. Like that excludes your Roman Reigns's, your MJF's, and various other. This is untapped still. He has made the most out of the least over and over and over and over again. I agree with you on why aren't we allowed mistakes? It barely even felt like it was a full mistake. Like it was pretty well moved along with. I was fine with it. I like LA Knight Miz. I really do. I think it's good for Miz. Yeah. That's the irony. Normally in this spot, it'd be Miz giving LA Knight the rub. It felt like they're both elevating each other right now because Miz isn't going to be in a spot where he's that important. And LA Knight, it's very hard to find somebody that can stand on the other side and go toe to toe on the microphone with LA Knight. So I dug the interaction. I dig the whole thing. I hope there's more legs to this in the future, right? I mean,
yeah,
I would like to see a rivalry between the two, like legitimate one, maybe culminating at Payback in a longer match than we've seen out of the Miz recently, and have LA Knight go, whatever it is, 15 minutes on that card, 20 minutes with the Miz in an exciting match, tell a legit pro wrestling story there, and that could be a nice real test to see if it's worth giving the over the moon push to LA Knight that we've kind of argued about for a few months now.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you think about him, breaking the brand split? Was the Slim Jim, prize that he's now a free agent?
It didn't bother me. They kind of explained it with the photo shoot thing, right?
But if he's back next week,
that's an issue.
Continue this feud, and they got to now because we all want to see it.
I know. That is the issue. I don't think the Slim Jim thing is enough to break the brand split, but we've also talked about it. I mean, the brand split's dead. Let's be honest with ourselves. Yeah. It'd be nice on paper. It's never worked, unfortunately. Or at least it hasn't worked in the recent era as well as it could.
No, I will certainly agree with you on that. I mean, who knows? Maybe the trade was Wade Barrett for both for Kevin Patrick and Corey Graves, and Wade Barrett and LA Knight for Kevin Patrick and Corey Graves. Maybe that was a swap deal. Who knows? But they didn't say it. I mean, you got Numa1 Superfly in the comments saying brand split is indeed dead. We got Matt Williams in the comments saying everything the Miz does feels real, and I respect him incredibly. I agree with that. Miz has been incredibly underrated for years now. I am really disappointed with how his title reign turned out, to be honest with you, a couple of years back, because he really deserved that title reign. But now let's move on to the return of the New Day, as after months of being out of action, Kofi Kingston returned on last night's episode of Raw to answer an open challenge alongside his tag team partner Xavier Woods against the Viking Raiders. And the New Day has been missed. They certainly have been. The only negative about this entire thing was I think the crowd thought Big E was going to be there because there was a huge pop, and then as soon as he was just Kofi and Xavier, it kind of just went down slightly. But I mean, what can you do about that? But they really need new tag teams. I mean, the New Day said it later in the night that the Usos have split up now. The Street Profits, they're doing their own, they're doing a new angle type thing. So that's gonna be fresh as well. But they really needed to inject some new tag teams into this division. And the New Day being back is a great sign. I'm really excited to see what's next for them. They put on a decent, nothing special match against the Viking Raiders. And of course, the New Day got the victory. But Clark, give me your thoughts on this one.
I love seeing the New Day back. I've wondered kind of where they've been. I understand Big E's situation is, it's not looking great as far as an in-ring return. But just seeing Kofi and Woods back in the ring was awesome. The match was fun. I agree with you on injecting new life into the tag division. It's absolutely necessary. And it's funny because I feel like, logically speaking, if you just look at the roster on paper, there's plenty of teams, right? It's not for lack of talent in the tag division. And that's the most frustrating part about this whole thing, right? It's like, why can't, it's a little bit like, not to compare it directly to the AEW women's division, but it's a little bit like that. It's like, guys, come on. I mean, we had the tag division main event night 1 of WrestleMania this year. And coming out of that, we've had a lot of great work from Sammy and Kevin. But that seems to be the depth of the tag division.
Yeah.
As far as the product is concerned, that's all we get is whoever. I mean, we had the brief Imperium, we had the brief Pretty Deadly, but like very small, short stop pushes. And I feel like it hurts the other teams that aren't at the top of the food chain. And then we just obviously split up the Usos. So having the New Day return, I have no issue with it whatsoever. And I enjoyed it as well because I'm a huge fan of both.
Yeah, I do absolutely agree with that. I mean, and another interesting point is Sami Zayn, legitimately injured? Because if he is, well, this could be an issue, couldn't it?
Unless they cut his elbow open and put an egg in there. I'm pretty sure he's legitimately injured. We saw it.
Well, I mean, how long is he going to be out then? I mean, they've got to vacate these titles.
It depends on what that injury is. It could be various different things. It depends on if it's just swelling. Like Cena had a similar issue I remember years ago. But it really depends on what the prognosis is, right? I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, because they haven't had a title defense now in quite a few weeks themselves. Yeah, and I thought they'd really be the workhorses of that tag team division. But in fairness to them, there's not been many established tag teams.
I mean, they've appeared on Raw, though, virtually every week. So, I mean, you got to give
and
often on SmackDown as well. So, like, they haven't been quite the workhorses, I think. But I think that's because there's hasn't really. There's not enough true. I mean, there is on paper, but there isn't in principle. Like it's a frustrating dynamic.
I mean, Pretty Deadly were looking really promising, but they messed up that feud. They didn't build it enough anyway. And then, of course, Pretty Deadly got injured, and that really was a shame because they were set. They were, alongside Austin Theory. It was getting quite interesting. That injury, it was heartbreaking. Truly, truly was. But now let's move on. Let's move on to the main event of the show. Let's move on to the Judgment Day facing Shinsuke Nakamura and Seth Rollins, and Cody Rhodes. Now, first things first, small details. We talk about this a lot. Small little details in a story, they go a long way. And WWE over the past year or so have been a bit more intentional in doing them. Damian Priest walked to the ring in this match several steps ahead of Finn Balor. Right. And several steps ahead of the rest of the Judgment Day. It was almost as if Damian Priest was saying, well, I'm the most important guy here now. I'm carrying this briefcase. I'm the next world champion. I'm the most important person in this group. Well, hang on a second. Rhea Ripley's also a world champion. Hang on a second. Finn Balor was initially the leader of this group. I mean, I don't think there's a case for Dominic, but for both of those two, I mean, I thought they'd both, get a little bit annoyed by that. And there were some communication issues straight off, straight off the start of this match. Raquel Rodriguez also took out Rhea Ripley during the entrance and they had a brawl. Raquel still not cleared for that match, but that's clearly the feud that they're building. And I think it's going to be a great, great match. Weeks ago on this Tuesday edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, we spoke about the potential, of Raquel versus Rhea Ripley, and we were super excited by it. I hope they continue building it because this is the first real threat Rhea's had. In fact, it's the first real feud Rhea's had since winning that World Championship. But Balor and Priest couldn't agree on who was going to start the match, and neither could, Seth and Cody. So that meant that Shinsuke Nakamura and Dirty Dominic Mysterio decided that they would start instead. And this entire match on both teams was, can they coexist? It really was that story on both teams. I mean, Judgement Day ended up getting on the same page in the match, and Balor and Priest were working well together, actually. But slight issue. So did Cody and Seth. And in the end, with some help from Sami Zayn getting his revenge on the outside and stopping the Judgment Day from cheating, Cody hit the crossroads, only a single crossroads, on Finn Balor and got the victory. Clark, this main event, this 6-man main event tag team match, give me your thoughts on it.
It was exciting. It was very exciting, but it was odd. Like you said, it was a double can they coexist storyline. And then the argument following, that's another thing we'll get into. Obviously, yeah, I didn't hate it. The Nakamura turn felt good. I was like, okay, this is something different, and it makes sense for Seth. But then, what does that mean for Cody? And that's where I'm confused. It leads to our next conversation, which we will get to. As far as the match was concerned, Judgment Day looked fine. I felt like there was a lot of, oh my gosh, great episode of Raw, and I feel like there were a lot of highs, but then this was okay, right? Like it wasn't. I wasn't blown away, and I also thought Sammy's involvement with the injury too, like a little odd, right?
Yeah,
like we know he's not going to get physical. I don't really get it. And it's not like there's like this big babyface faction opposite the Judgment Day that they're trying to keep together. It's just like, oh, what are the babyface locker room trying to stay getting along? Like that's very WCW. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just one of those deals. At the end of the day, I think this is one of those things where we've got an awesome main event picture on Raw. Right?
Yeah.
But we don't have direction for everybody. And now we've just added Shinsuke Nakamura to that main event picture, which is great for Shinsuke. I'm a huge Shin fan.
Yeah. But let's go on to that, right? Shinsuke Nakamura, right? They won the match. The babyfaces won the match. They beat the Judgment Day. They were all celebrating. Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes were having the time of their life. They weren't even really paying attention. And then Kinshasa to the face of Seth freaking Rollins and Nakamura. Shinsuke Nakamura has turned heel, and he is seemingly next in line for Mr. Seth freaking Rollins and the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, months ago on this show, months and months ago, I said the issue of Seth Rollins being World Champion is that there's not many heels on the roster who can, provide title shots for him throughout the year. So I knew there were going to have to be a couple of heel turns. Nakamura, since he's returned, they built him up quite well, to be honest with you. He's taken recently a couple of losses, but before that, he was on a big winning streak. Him turning heel and him being, the next challenger for Seth Rollins, especially at, not one of the main shows, just something like Payback in a month's time. I think it's great. I really, really do. I'm really glad Nakamura is back in that title picture, even if it's just for a month-long feud. It gives, Seth somebody to face who isn't in the Judgment Day. it, leaves the Cody thing, or leaves you wondering about the Cody thing for, a few more weeks at the very least. So I'm all good with this. But you really got to sell this story. You've got to explain to us, why did Nakamura turn heel? Clark, your thoughts?
I mean, I think I agree. I wish I had something better than I agree with you. You had to turn some people heel to provide challengers for Seth Rollins. That's the answer, right? Like it, and Shinsuke has shown he has the range to be both. So why not now? The delivery was excellent. I don't know about the delivery needing to happen with Cody Rhodes also in the ring, with Priest, with Balor, with Dom, right? With Sami Zayn in the ring or around the ring, right? With everyone involved. I don't know if the timing is the way that I would have gone about it personally, right? Like I might have had that Nakamura turn happen maybe next week. Nakamura wants to team with Seth, or Seth only wants to team with Nakamura and not Cody because they don't get along. Acts like he trusts him. Nakamura, Kinshasa or something, gets him in that spot. If I had the pencil, that might be the route that I would go.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand how much it felt like a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, it was such an outstanding run. I'm like, yeah, there were high points, but I feel like Raw's been pretty consistent lately, and this wasn't like a blow you away Raw.
I hated last week's episode. And I thought
last week was down. It was up from last week. That I think changed the perception for sure. That's a really good point.
That's a good point. That's a good point though as well. The fact that last week was so bad that it made this week's look better. But this week it brought back tons of talent. It created storylines of talent who haven't been featured much lately. And because of that, I think that was, a real good selling point for the show, I'd say. And it also just built storylines really well, to be honest. I didn't have an issue with that. I also didn't have an issue with Cody and Sami being at ringside, and I'll tell you why. They were not focused on it. The second they turned around and realized what happened, their reaction was gold. It really, really was. I mean, we got a comment here with by Numero One Superfly saying, "Do you think Shinsuke turned heel because he just felt like it?" I mean, potentially, usually that's what happens.
I would say more than likely the answer is like yes, but it was more complex than that. He probably felt like it because he was like, I'm not going to get a world title opportunity as a babyface against our babyface champion.
Yeah.
Right? That would be I think, if it was his decision personally, right?
Yeah. I mean, let's now move on to talk about the biggest babyface in the industry right now, Cody Rhodes. I mean, Clark, your household hated him until a few weeks ago, and now you're the biggest fans of him. I don't get it. You've adopted him into your family, right? And a few weeks ago, you were complaining about his existence. Well, anyway, right? I mean, he was in this match. He did well. He got the pin. Looked great. The crowd loved him. Did everything well, but I mean, the real question is what's actually next for him, because coming out of this Raw, I am confused.
It needs to be huge, whatever it is, and I wish I had a good answer. If it was Seth Rollins, he's got to take a loss. That doesn't help.
No, I don't think it can be Seth, to be honest.
It isn't Judgment Day.
That's the thing. I think it might be.
It's not Sammy.
Because why else was he involved with Judgment Day? But at the same time, he beat all of Judgment Day on the build up to WrestleMania.
Maybe he beats Damian Priest in a match that is a rivalry, but not for the briefcase.
Perhaps. I mean, maybe that's the way you go about it, Priest and Cody.
But I don't know who to have him feud with. I really, really tried when we were talking about the topics before to come up with like an awesome one. I've been kind of rolling on like fantasy booking stuff. Bronson Reed. I don't know. Like,
just
what do you do?
Loss out to Nakamura.
I know, that's what I mean. Like, what do you do? Like, yeah, it's a tough thing to book. There's a lot of guys on SmackDown I could think of that might make some sense. Maybe Bobby Lashley, but
there's a draft in place.
Very much so. It's a conundrum. And it's funny because as much as we complain about the Brock storyline, it's like you don't know what you got till it's gone, right? Like,
I think there's two possible options, really. One is, like we said, Judgment Day, maybe match with Damian Priest, like you suggested. That could be interesting, and then that could somehow, cause more friction between Balor and Priest if you do that right. And of course, we know WWE likes their Money in the Bank holder to, lose a lot. The second option is a bit more of a wild shout, and that is Omos, because Omos is currently a free agent. He can work on either brand. Yes, he basically loses every match he's in, Omos, but he is an attraction. He is.
Omos would be pretty fascinating. I was actually considering saying Omos, but I just didn't want to go there because we've seen it too much. It would be cool if we could somehow have it be like a special solo Sikoa and Cody Rhodes would be awesome.
Oh, we've seen that already, though.
I know, but look, we could see it again.
They're all involved in
what
Jimmy
about
J?
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, Braun Breaker. I don't know, man.
Let's call up Braun Breaker for Cody Rhodes.
Grayson Waller.
He's on SmackDown again.
I know.
There is a brand split in place.
All the logical choices are not on the right brand.
I'm going to be honest here, right? We got very little time, but this year's past, this past year's draft was the worst draft I think they've ever done. Because we're now, multiple months into it, and we've run out of people for pretty much Seth to face without turning people. We've run out of people for Cody face. There's not enough heels on the brand. There really isn't. I mean, the Judgment Day are just established heels anyway, because the Judgment Day are just having to be in every feud because of it. And then because of that, Rhea Ripley's not involved in any feuds of her own, apart from now they're doing something with Raquel. But that's the issue they're in. I don't know who booked this year's draft. I really don't, but whoever wrote it, it was not a good decision.
The draft is the worst. It's like, it is, which just is like, the weirdest part about it is somehow they made like every division feel predictable until Mania.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no like, ooh, they could challenge for that. Like, no. There isn't like, a legitimate. I can't think of someone outside of Cody who you're like next world champion or like next champion of this, next United States, maybe LA Knight. Like he's not gonna win the IC, but maybe it would have been United States.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, actually. On SmackDown, they've got tons of people. They've got Cameron Grimes. They've got tons of people who they're not even like using, who, could be stars for them. And I mean, on Raw too, they've got Odyssey Jones. They've got quite a few people. They've had JD McDonough. They've just not built people. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the mid-card booking in WWE lately, and I'm not, you guys know me, I'm a big WWE fan, I really am, but the mid-card booking's been poor lately.
It has.
And because of that, and because of the how bad the mid-card booking has been, apart from the mid-card champion Gunther, it means that they haven't built up anybody for actual, world title feuds, and that's why they're having to do things like turn Nakamura heel. Now, I don't actually have an issue with Nakamura turning heel at all, but there's only so many people you can do that with, and it's like, I'm going to be honest, I think Damian Priest has got to cash in pretty soon. I really do, because I think we're in a really difficult position here. But even then, outside of Seth and Cody, what top baby faces are there? It's Kevin and Sammy, but they're the tag champions. So then I guess the move would be then is to have them drop the tag team titles and then have them feud with Damian Priest. Oh, it's a nightmare to book, isn't it?
It's just, we're going to need to see some call-ups, I think, from NXT.
But we did, and they didn't do anything with them.
I know. It's a sticky situation, to say the least. It's one of those things where you're like, yeah, but the roster is so good. Like, we keep saying Seth, Cody, like, it's like, hey, figure it out. You know what I mean?
I almost think we should end the brand split, and I never thought that would be something that I'm saying. But on that note, that brings us to the end of the show, guys. We'll be back here tomorrow, the same time, 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, to talk and preview AEW Dynamite. But we will also be back, Clark will be, along with Drizzy and Shard, back later on tonight for the NXT post-show Wrestling Off the Air. And that will be 10 minutes after NXT has gone off the air. It's going to be a great show. You guys do not want to miss it. Those three, I can tell, Clark, you guys are going to have a lot of fun tonight.
No
You
doubt.
absolutely are. Shard and Drizzy, they're hyped for it. I can't exaggerate how hyped they are. It's going to be a banger of a show. But thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and like. If you're on Spotify, a cheeky 5-star would be very much appreciated. And if you're on Twitch, a follow would be awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We will see you